This is what millions of people will come to see, one of the most important and recognizable artifacts in all of human history.
Whenever you think of ancient Egypt, one image probably comes to mind: the golden mask of King Tutankhamun. It is one of the most famous treasures ever discovered in Egypt. For more than a century, Egyptologists and historians believed the mask was created specifically for the young king, to protect him in the afterlife and preserve his image for eternity. But what if that belief is wrong? What if this mask was never made for King Tutankhamun at all? Because when scientists examined the mask using X-ray fluorescence, XRF, and advanced quantum imaging, they uncovered signs of hidden repairs, erased inscriptions, and evidence suggesting the mask may never have been made for King Tutankhamun in the first place. So whose mask was it, really? And why was it placed on Tutankhamun's face instead? Let's get into it. The Golden Death Mask. November 1922. Deep inside Egypt's Valley of the Kings, British archaeologist Howard Carter stood on the edge of giving up. For nearly 5 years, Carter and his financial backer, Lord Carnarvon, had searched relentlessly for the lost tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun. Season after season, they uncovered broken pottery, abandoned tombs, and countless dead ends. Many experts believed the young king's burial place had either been robbed in ancient times or lost forever. But Carter refused to quit. Then, in the early days of November, his workers made an unexpected discovery. Beneath the remains of ancient workmen's huts, they uncovered a flight of stone steps cut into the bedrock. As the sand was carefully cleared away, the staircase led to a sealed doorway stamped with the royal cartouche of Tutankhamun. No one had expected to find it there. For days, Carter carefully documented every detail before sending a telegram to Lord Carnarvon, urging him to come to Egypt immediately. Together, they prepared to open what could be the greatest archaeological discovery of the century. On November 26, 1922, Carter carefully made a small hole through the final sealed doorway and held up a candle. Warm air escaped from the chamber. For several long moments, he simply stared into the darkness. When Lord Carnarvon finally asked, "Can you see anything?" Carter replied with words that would become famous around the world. "Yes, wonderful things." He was looking at a tomb unlike anything archaeologists had ever seen. The first chamber alone held more than 600 priceless objects. Golden chariots stood beside painted chests. Beyond the antechamber lay the king's burial chamber. At its center stood 4 enormous golden shrines surrounding a massive quartzite sarcophagus. Inside were 3 nested coffins, each protecting the next. The innermost coffin, crafted from nearly 110 kilograms of solid gold, held the mummy of the young pharaoh. Covering his face was the object that would soon become the most famous artifact in the world: the golden mask of Tutankhamun. Standing about 54 centimeters tall and weighing nearly 10 kilograms, the mask was crafted from gold and decorated with lapis lazuli, turquoise, quartz, obsidian, and colored glass. Even after more than 3,000 years, its calm expression looked almost lifelike. News of the discovery spread across the world almost overnight. Newspapers placed the mask on their front pages. Museums celebrated its beauty, and millions became fascinated by the young pharaoh. Before long, the golden mask had become the greatest symbol of ancient Egypt. And for more than a century, almost everyone believed it had been created for one person: King Tutankhamun. Until one small detail made archaeologists question everything. The first clue. Discovery in 1922, the golden mask of Tutankhamun became the centerpiece of the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. Protected behind glass and guarded as one of the world's most valuable treasures, it was admired by millions of visitors every year. Because the mask was priceless and extremely fragile, very few researchers were allowed to examine it up close. Most Egyptologists had to rely on photographs, museum records, and careful visual observations. For decades, almost no one questioned its identity. It was simply accepted as the funeral mask of King Tutankhamun. Then a few experts began looking more closely, and they noticed something that had been hiding in plain sight for more than 3,000 years. The ears. Unlike most burial masks made for adult Egyptian pharaohs, this one had pierced earlobes. At first, the holes were difficult to see. That was because both piercings had been covered with an extremely thin layer of gold, almost as if someone had tried to hide them. Only after careful examination did researchers realize that the openings were still there beneath the delicate covering. Suddenly, a tiny detail became impossible to ignore. Most masks made for adult kings did not have pierced ears. In ancient Egyptian art, pierced ears appeared far more often on women and young children than on fully grown male pharaohs. Could there be a simple explanation? Some experts believed there was. Tutankhamun became king at only 9 years old, so the mask could simply reflect his youth. If that was true, there was no mystery at all. But the questions didn't end there. As researchers continued studying the mask, they noticed something else. The face itself looked unusually soft. The jawline appeared less pronounced. The cheeks seemed more delicate, and the overall proportions differed from many other royal masks. On their own, none of these features proved anything. Ancient Egyptian artists often followed different artistic styles, and a young ruler could naturally have been portrayed with more youthful features. Yet, when the pierced ears and the facial features were considered together, a remarkable possibility began to emerge. What if this mask had never been made for Tutankhamun? Some Egyptologists traced the clues back to the mysterious Amarna period, suggesting the mask may originally have belonged to another ruler, possibly Neferuaten, a royal name that many Egyptologists believe was used by Queen Nefertiti. It was a fascinating theory, but the only way to know the truth was to stop studying the mask's appearance and begin studying the gold itself, looking inside the gold. In 2015, for the first time in years, researchers were given a rare opportunity to closely examine the golden mask of Tutankhamun at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. The work took place at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo as part of the German-Egyptian Conservation Project, working alongside Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities. The team was led by German conservator Christian Ekman, a specialist in ancient metal artifacts. But they weren't trying to prove an old theory. They wanted something far more reliable: evidence. Instead of judging the mask by its appearance, they decided to examine the gold itself. To do that, the team used a scientific technique called X-ray fluorescence, or XRF. It was the perfect tool for a priceless artifact. The technique could reveal the chemical composition of the mask without cutting, drilling, or causing even the slightest damage. That was essential, because every part of the mask had to remain exactly as it had been for more than 3,000 years. The process was surprisingly simple. A beam of X-rays was directed at a tiny section of the mask. The gold responded by emitting its own energy, which sensitive instruments measured to identify the elements inside the metal. By repeating this process across different parts of the mask, researchers could compare its composition with remarkable accuracy. Slowly, hundreds of measurements began revealing details that had remained hidden for centuries. The results were unexpected. The face and neck were made from one gold alloy, while other sections, including parts of the headdress, were made from a slightly different mixture. Rather than revealing poor craftsmanship, the findings showed that ancient Egyptian goldsmiths carefully selected different alloys for different parts of the mask. The team also examined the joints, decorative pieces, and the famous royal beard. What they found was equally remarkable. Instead of a single piece of gold, the mask had been assembled from multiple carefully crafted sections, joined together with extraordinary precision. Even after more than 3,000 years, the workmanship remained astonishing. The scientific evidence answered some questions, but it also raised new ones. The differences in the gold could not prove the mask had belonged to another ruler. Yet they showed that the mask was far more complex than anyone had imagined. For the first time, the debate was no longer based only on artistic style or historical records. Now the evidence was coming directly from the mask itself. And another powerful imaging technique was about to uncover an even bigger surprise hidden beneath its surface: quantum imaging analysis. The 2015 investigation answered one important question. Scientists finally knew what the golden mask was made of, but in the process, they uncovered an even bigger mystery. X-ray fluorescence, or XRF, had revealed the different gold alloys used throughout the mask without causing any damage. It showed that ancient Egyptian craftsmen had carefully selected different mixtures of gold for different sections. The findings changed what experts knew about the mask's materials, but they still didn't know one crucial thing. How had the mask actually been built? The smooth golden surface revealed almost nothing. Every joint, every connection, and every hidden detail had been concealed beneath layers of polished gold for more than 3,000 years. Taking the mask apart to investigate was never an option. It is one of the world's most valuable archaeological treasures, and even the smallest amount of damage would have been unacceptable. Researchers needed another solution. Instead of studying the gold itself, they decided to look beneath its surface. That decision led to a new generation of high-resolution imaging. Unlike XRF, which measured the chemical elements inside the metal, these advanced imaging techniques were designed to reveal the mask's hidden construction. Some researchers describe these methods as quantum imaging because they rely on extremely sensitive technology capable of detecting details far beyond the reach of older scanning systems. The goal was completely different. Instead of asking, "What is the mask made of?" scientists were now asking, "How was it assembled?" The scans slowly peeled back thousands of years of history. What appeared to be a single masterpiece was actually far more complex. Researchers discovered that the famous burial mask had not been shaped from one solid piece of gold. Instead, master craftsmen had carefully formed several separate sheets before joining them together with astonishing precision. The face, the headdress, the collar, the cobra and vulture emblems, the ears, and other decorative sections had all been crafted separately and then assembled so perfectly that the seams were almost impossible to detect. Every new scan uncovered another hidden detail. Researchers identified incredibly fine joints beneath the surface, along with evidence of sophisticated joining techniques that allowed different pieces of gold to fuse together almost seamlessly. Even with modern technology, many of those connections remained difficult to see. The discoveries transformed the way experts viewed ancient Egyptian goldsmiths. They were not simply skilled artists. They were master engineers capable of solving incredibly complex manufacturing problems more than 3,000 years ago. But the most surprising discovery wasn't how the mask had been built. It was what those hidden joints revealed. As researchers examined them more closely, they noticed subtle signs that some sections had been altered after the mask was originally completed. The hidden name. The advanced scans had revealed that the mask had been altered. But the biggest question was still unanswered. What had been changed? To find out, researchers turned their attention to something many people never notice: the hieroglyphs. At first glance, the inscriptions looked perfectly ordinary. Like many royal burial objects, the mask was covered with sacred texts meant to protect the king in the afterlife. One of the longest inscriptions ran across the back of the mask, where words from chapter 151 of the Book of the Dead asked the gods to guard its wearer for eternity. Nothing seemed unusual until experts looked much closer. Using powerful magnification, they examined the royal cartouches, the oval frames that enclosed a pharaoh's name. That's where they found something unexpected. Tiny scratches surrounded parts of the inscriptions. They weren't random marks caused by age. They looked like the careful work of an ancient craftsman. Under magnification, researchers concluded that earlier hieroglyphs had likely been removed before new ones were carved in their place. Whoever did the work polished the surface so carefully that the changes remained hidden for more than 3,000 years. Suddenly, every tiny mark became important. In ancient Egypt, a royal name was far more than an identity. Egyptians believed a person's name carried part of their soul. As long as that name survived, the person could continue to exist in the afterlife. Erasing a royal name wasn't simply correcting an inscription. It meant rewriting history itself. If another name had once been carved into the mask, then it raised an extraordinary possibility. What if the mask had originally belonged to someone else? The discovery brought historians back to one of the most mysterious chapters of Egyptian history. After the death of Akhenaten, Egypt entered a period of political uncertainty. Rulers disappeared from official records, royal names changed, and monuments connected to the Amarna period were altered or erased, as later kings tried to restore Egypt's traditional religion. Some Egyptologists believe the mask may have been one of those altered objects. The final puzzle: Tutankhamun died unexpectedly at around 19 years of age. His sudden death left the royal court with a problem they could not ignore. A pharaoh's funeral was one of the most important ceremonies in ancient Egypt. Preparing the tomb, completing the burial treasures, performing sacred rituals, and mummifying the king was a process that normally took about 70 days. Every step had to be carried out with extraordinary care. But Tutankhamun died unexpectedly at just 19, forcing priests and craftsmen to complete everything in a desperate rush. Some Egyptologists believe that pressure may explain why the golden mask contains so many unusual features. If the mask had originally been made for another royal ruler, modifying it would have been far quicker than creating an entirely new masterpiece from the beginning. It was a practical solution. But it may also have left behind tiny clues that survived for more than 3,000 years. One of the most famous involves the royal beard. For centuries, the beard remained attached to the mask before eventually breaking away. During an earlier restoration, conservators used a strong modern adhesive to glue it back into place. Years later, experts discovered the repair had damaged the original craftsmanship. The adhesive was carefully removed, and the beard was reattached using methods much closer to those used by ancient Egyptian goldsmiths. The incident reminded researchers that the mask had a complicated history, even after it left the tomb. Other details attracted attention as well. The protective cobra and vulture above the forehead showed signs of delicate repairs. Hidden joints beneath the surface revealed incredibly precise workmanship. In the end, the golden mask of Tutankhamun reminds us that history is never as simple as it first appears. Every new discovery brings us closer to the truth, yet it also leaves behind new questions that may never be fully answered. And perhaps that's what makes this ancient treasure so fascinating, more than 3,000 years after it was created. But what do you think? Was this mask originally made for Tutankhamun, or do you believe it once belonged to another royal figure? And if so, who do you think that person was? Let me know your thoughts about this in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more stories like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.